Hello, everyone. Today I'm talking with Adair Mosley, President and CEO of Pillsbury United Communities. Adair and PUC are taking bold, innovative action to build wealth in North Minneapolis and in other neighborhoods across the city. They're moving some big new solutions that have the potential to create transformational change. These efforts haven't hit the headlines, but they deserve attention and they require support from the region. Welcome, Adair.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for having me.
This is great. Glad you're here. Maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about Pillsbury United Communities. What's your mission and who do you serve?
Wonderful. Pillsbury United Communities is a 140-year-old community impact organization. And throughout that history and legacy, we've really anchored our approach in one thing, and that's humility. And asking communities, what do you need? And trying to unearth the bold and innovative solutions to be able to bring that in proximity to our communities. We are community builders, co-creating enduring change toward a just society. And it's undergirded by a vision that every person has personal, social, and economic power. And that work manifests itself into three areas: people, place, and prosperity. And that's really our interconnected system of change. We're pulling all three levers to be able to move our region truly toward a more equitable place. We serve communities that have aspirations and those that live and labor in those communities that really want a better life. And while that may sound broad, it's meant to be, because there are many people that rest in our communities that have those aspirations. And more particularly, it's been people who've been pushed to the margins, right? And our daily labor is removing the systemic barriers that stand in the way of human progress for those individuals so that they can live the life that they've determined for themselves and their families. And so thank you, and happy to be here today.
Well, you do a lot of different kinds of work. And something that you recently unveiled is a new vision called Justice-Built Communities. That has a goal of accelerating wealth creation in communities of color and creating an alternative to gentrification and displacement. Tell us more about Justice-Built Communities and the new Community Development Corporation that just launched.
Yeah, Justice-Built Communities was something that I think we've been thinking about for quite some time as an organization, and have actually seen the rich work that we've done over the course of a century as building community and developing community, whether it's using arts and cultures as the tool for transformation or developing something like a grocery store in North Minneapolis. It has been a through line of how do we stand up assets in our community. And certainly following the heinous murder of George Floyd, it really kind of catalyzed our thinking and what could we do? What's our contribution back to community that we could really co-create more equitable communities? And so from that was birthed Justice-Built Communities, which, as you've described, a community development corporation, but it's also a community quarterback. It's really about convening the stakeholders across sectors and promoting a comprehensive approach to neighborhood revitalization that has anti-gentrification and anti-displacement strategies attached to it. And at the ultimate goal here is, how do we drive enterprise development and wealth creation in Black and Brown communities? And so our goal is really to play that quarterback role in helping to bring multiple sectors and institutions and individuals that are already working on this work together to be able to revitalize our communities. And the most important piece of this is really centering community's voice and putting community at the center of kind of the problem-solving question that I think will yield the type of returns that we all profess in our language and in our beliefs. And so we have multiple strategies that we're going to be rolling out as part of this initiative, from looking at land acquisition that we can bridge the ownership to Black and Brown entrepreneurs, or put a redevelopment plan against that land. And then strategically thinking about how do we help develop in concert or in partnership with other, particularly Black and Brown developers, and helping to make sure that our community in place is put together, that we all can be proud of, and restore the dignity in communities that have simply been denied it.
It's bold in that we're talking about raising capital, buying land, holding land, building buildings, right? Creating space for Black and brown businesses. It's a pretty big idea.
Yeah, it is. And if you know anything about me, I like to go big. Because what I believe in this moment is that we have to move beyond tweaks to transformation. And that incremental improvement simply will not get us to the level of transformative change that we all seek. And so in this moment, I think we need to be thinking about the bold and radical ideas that are going to move us to a more just and prosperous place, which means we need to take leaps. And part of what I've tried to codify as a strategy for Pillsbury is how do we continue to take leaps as an organization that moves our communities forward. And so this is one of those ideas, and there are many that I think we can be taking collectively as a community, whether it's through physical infrastructure like this or policy. Certainly it is another way to take those leaps.
Absolutely. Well, it's a bold step and bold leadership. And major corporations and others in this region are coming around that idea to make it real. So you and your team are working in communities that have been hit hard by multiple shocks this year. Of all the challenges that individuals and families are facing in the neighborhoods where you're working, is there an issue or issues that you think require more focus from leaders in this region and state right now?
Yeah. I think this region has done an excellent job of unearthing the kind of disparities that we're facing, and we have multiple reports that demonstrate that. And what a thing like COVID-19 and even the racial injustices that we're seeing in our society are also showing or demonstrating how fragile and inequitable the systems are in our communities, and how we need to rebuild those things that really foster resiliency. And I think, frankly, and this won't be certainly a surprise to any of the viewers today, is that our education system continues to be extremely inequitable and fragile. That's even in a moment where most students don't have the infrastructure or the tools that they need in a distant learning environment. And the other thing that I think is coupled with that, and there's certainly intersectionality around this, is economic prosperity. If we're not thinking about how to move more individuals and more families up the social and economic mobility ladder, then I don't believe that we will be able to solve for these inequities in the appropriate way. We can pass a suite of progressive policies, but we have to be thinking about how do we have the American dream in touch with every individual that truly wants it. And so that's the economic pieces, whether it's through home ownership opportunities, whether it's through small business development, whether it's through creating more jobs that pay above what we've described as the living wage. We know that that's simply not enough to be able to sustain a household. And so we have to be pulling all of these levers at this time. And unfortunately, we've allowed all of them to erode. That is a demonstration of where we're at as a society, frankly. But it's furthered, the further inequity is here in Minnesota. And I believe that we have the political will, the social kind of capital and community capital at this moment to move particularly on those two. And those will be the great equalizers, I believe. If we can get our educational systems right to serve students in an equitable way, it will yield the return that I think we all want in this time.
Let's keep looking forward. Let's look beyond 2020 into the future. I mean, everyone who's working to drive positive change in this community needs a vision for what we're trying to create in order to be successful. Do you have a vision for where Minneapolis-Saint Paul could be in 3 to 5 years on matters of racial justice, equity, and inclusion?
Yeah, that's a big question, and I think before the vision, what I think it's going to take is bold and fearless kind of leadership. And it's going to take us to be really aligned as a region. And there's some indicators that we're moving in that way, but then I think there's also some times that there's tension in that. And not that tension is bad, right? I think tension is the thing that will yield. It's the thing that we've even embraced as an organization, right? But it's the collaborative spirit that gets us to a better end. And so I'm certainly believing that if we have leaders who can suspend their own agendas and put to the front of that the community's will and the community's vision for itself, that we will be able to yield the returns of a more just and equitable society. More specifically, I think this region has an opportunity to stand up, access an opportunity, and this is at the meta level, certainly, access an opportunity to those that live and labor in community. And this is really creating communities that are thriving from business development, that have access to the basic necessities that individuals and families need in order to thrive, like grocery stores and other infrastructures, quality schools in our community. We know this exists because it exists in communities around Minneapolis and St. Paul. And so we know that we have a blueprint for how we can build more equitable and just communities. But it's going to take narrative shifting, certainly, about the communities in which we're serving. And it's going to take us to really push bold solutions in this next iteration over the next 2 to 5 years. Lastly, I'll say is one of the things that I profess a lot inside of my organization is that the mission is something we can touch. It does not have to sit out there and we do this work 30 or 40 years and say, well, we tried. It is something that we can actually touch in very short periods of time, but it's going to take the resources and frankly, more specifically, the money. It's going to take the political will to do it, but we know we've seen it done, and we've seen a level of ingenuity and innovation immerse even in a moment like this. And so while that's certainly broad and doesn't get to the specifics, but I think if we prioritize self-actualized and self-determined communities, that's justice. And if we center that in our approach moving forward, I think we will all stand 5 years out from now and be extremely proud of the work that we've done.
Well, you're bringing us into the hope space. So let's close with hope. I mean, this is a hard time for many, but what's giving you hope?
Yeah, one of the things that gives me hope is the energy, despite I think some of the narratives that we hear about the unrest. There's a counter to that, and it's a lot of people that are pulling towards systemic change, a lot of people pulling towards justice. What gives me hope is actually, folks like myself and other of my colleagues and many of the social justice activists and advocates that live and labor this work every day. I think it's expected for us to be somewhat on the front lines of leading social justice work. But what I see in this moment is actually our private sector leaders and business leaders stepping up. I see them having bold and courageous conversations inside of their corporations. Now, there's opportunity to always do more. And I don't want to misstating that, but I also want to acknowledge in this moment that people who I would have never thought would be having the tough conversations are having them and are bringing it. And my motto has been, whether you've been on the road of kind of fighting for social justice all your life, or you're just now coming to understand the deep systemic racism and injustices that are pervasive throughout our society. It does not matter where you're at on that spectrum. What matters is that we're here together, and where we go from here matters. And what is giving me hope is that more and more individuals are coming around the table, that everyone's at the table and it's all out on the table. And that we have an opportunity for people to pick up the pieces that they can own, but collectively pull in this moment. And then the last thing I'll say is youth are giving me hope. Youth have always been on the front lines of fighting for social justice and have been our consciousness of America. And I think we have an opportunity to continue to elevate their voices and prioritize their needs in this moment. But if we continue to serve as mentors and guides to them, but also giving them the autonomy to be bold and courageous in this moment, I think that they will help guide us to this utopia. And while certainly things like Justice Built Communities that I've shared with you is not the panacea, right? It won't be, it's not the silver bullet, if you will, but it's the bold and transformative solutions that I think we need in this moment. And it's not only organizations like Pillsbury United Communities that's thinking about that, but I know a lot of my colleagues are thinking about that. And my motto has been, it's all needed. Everything that is on the table is needed. And frankly, we have to align the resources to actualize on it.
Well, I want to thank you for those words and for your acts, all the things that you're doing day to day, and your team and so many others in community. The Greater Mississippi Partnership is fully aligned with this work, and we're excited to see what comes next with Justice Built Communities and the CDC and so much more. So thanks very much, Adair.
Thank you very much, and thank you for providing this platform.
Absolutely.